So welcome to yet another video on Women's Cricket Central. India have managed to pip England in what was supposed to be a very historic encounter, and historic is what it ended up being. We saw a lot of names making it to the Lord's Honours board. We saw Kranti Gaur become the first ever women's cricket in the history of the sport to be named as part of the board. And apart from that, we also saw Yastika Bhatia later become the first ever women's batter to be featured in the board. And later we saw Sophie Eccleston in the third innings to become the first ever English woman to be featured on the Lord's board. So fantastic in that sense. And apart from that as well, there's lots to talk about. And we've got a newly coined baby-faced assassin joining us. We've got none other than Aswin Anil from Women's Cricket by JB joining us. And folks, of course, if you haven't already, please do yourselves a favor and follow and subscribe to Women's Cricket by JB on YouTube and Instagram. I don't think they are on Twitter. If they are, then do follow them there as well. But apart from that, of course, Aswin, happy to have you here on our channel. What brings you over here?
Great to be here. I think the discussion on this test match, what a historic test match, what a historic win. I was looking forward to this test match for a very long time, following closely every single day since it began. And what a day for it to end. Day 4 of the test match, going until the last day. I know it was only like the first session, but what a historic test match. So historic in so many sense, but for India to continue to be undefeated in England.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's generally some record to not have been defeated by the home side in their country. And we're not talking about minnows here. We're talking about arguably the flag bearers of the sport in and of itself. And to maintain such a record, fantastic on their part. And once again, when it comes to the test format or the longest format, I don't think it's ever been an issue with the Indian women's team, right? When it comes to performances or results, they've always been a thoroughly professional side over here.
That is true. I mean, 100%. I was very skeptical. I know we are talking about history, but even after the toss and everything, when the playing 11 was announced, and I know we'll talk about that, I was a bit skeptical with the bowling lineup. But now, in hindsight, after the match has been done, I don't think India got it wrong. And it just goes to show how dominant India has been in the test format. And as much as we don't play it very often, every time we do play it, and I know we lost against Australia and Waka, but that was a pink ball test. But as much as we don't play it very often, every time we do play a test match, we show how dominant we can be in this format.
To be honest, I don't mind sticking my head out and saying, had they even got their selections wrong, I'm pretty sure they would have come over the line simply because how dominant they have been in this format. And this once again takes me back to this conversation I overheard from, or between Sophie Devine and Katie Martin, where she spoke about Indian batters. And it's something that I also truly believe in. Indian batters or Indian women/girls, when they are practicing the sport, playing the sport, learning the sport, the emphasis in this part of the world has always been on technique. It's always be technically sound first and become effective over the course of your career. With Sophie Devine, that wasn't the case. So she spoke about how for her personally, or for batters from, say, New Zealand or anywhere else, the focus is always on scoring runs. It doesn't matter where your front foot is. It doesn't matter how your back lift is. It doesn't matter how, your bat angles are. As long as you're scoring runs, you're scoring the boundaries. That's all that matters. And that's always been the focus for others. Never been the case with India. You look at batters, you look at anyone from back in the day, from a Sandhya Agarwal to a Mithali Raj, even now when you look at a Smriti Mandana, technically sound. You don't need to worry too much about how they might not be adept enough to handle the red ball. And once again, before people just mistake that, yeah, it's red ball cricket, sure. This is also the Dukes we're talking about, not something that they would have played a lot of. The Dukes red ball is a beast in and of itself. For those who are wondering, how difficult it might be, please go watch what happened last month at this very same venue between England and New Zealand, and you'll probably get an idea of how difficult these slight changes are, because they're not visible to the naked eye. We tend to take them for granted, or they tend to go amiss. But apart from that as well, itself, Ashwin, you spoke about how you weren't very much happy with the Indian setup or the Indian 11, at least at the start of the game. What did you first make of it? Like, what were the changes you had in mind, or the players you had in mind? And secondly, what about the English 11 as well? Because we've spoken enough about India. We are, of course, going to talk about the home team as well.
Yeah, first starting off with England, I wasn't surprised that they won the toss and chose to field first, although I thought that was a bit defensive. But when they did announce they're playing 11 with Lauren Filer, Lauren Bell, and Issy Wong, that didn't surprise me, because a lot of people were talking about how in the first 10 to 20 overs the pitch will be inducive to fast bowling. So the fact that England had these 3 fast bowlers and chose to bowl first, defensive in my opinion, and some people were surprised by it, but it didn't surprise me after the playing 11 was announced. Now, with the Indian squad, I wasn't disappointed or I wasn't sad. I was looking forward to possibly Nandini Sharma, no logical or tactical sense. I just the excitability factor of it. I was a bit worried about Kranti Gaud only because of how inconsistent she had been with her line and lengths in the World Cup or leading up to the T20 World Cup. I know it's a different format altogether, but we hadn't seen any consistent spells or any rhythm in her bowling in the T20 format, which is also why I was a bit scared or reluctant in the sense of how India is going to go, especially because if you look at the experience of the England fast bowlers put together, they've played 10 test matches together. The Indian fast bowlers put together, they've only played two, which is also why I was a bit skeptical and a bit worried. But knowing that the India was going to bat first, I was a bit hopeful because we knew how the pitch was going to play out in the next couple of days, having three spinners in the squad. With Sri Charini also debuting, I was very, very happy about that. I wanted her to be debuting. I wanted Yastika Bhatia at number 3 because, like you said, I wanted Yastika Bhatia at number 3 because she's technically so sound. I think she's one of the most technically sound batters in the squad. A lot of people might be surprised by
But
this, but
yeah.
I think she moves her feet. She plays both spin and pace quite well. And if you take her out of the power play, that factor, you don't even need to talk about that in the test format. So I thought she had to be at the number 3 batter for the Indian team.
If anything, I'll just add to it by saying that that's exactly where our sort of our annoyance or nuisance stems from. It's the fact that we know she is technically sound. She's got the technique to survive the rigors of not just Test cricket but also the ever evolving nature of T20 cricket, because she has the game. It's just that she refuses to apply or execute herself to the best of her abilities, and that's where and that is a gap that can be covered very easily. So fingers crossed, we'll of course see her conquer not just Test and ODIs but even the T20 format. But sticking to the 11s once again, Ashwin, a market change between the two sides was the fact that England went ahead with 3 pacers while India went ahead with 3 spinners. What did you make of that firstly? Because I know in hindsight we can always talk about how, yeah, it worked in India's favor. But were you happy with England sort of selecting the 11 that they did? Because I really thought someone like Tilly Coleman could have played a very big role.
Now, I did see a pre-match before the match started, and I know you rooted for her. I'll be honest, I wasn't surprised by the fact that they went with 3 fast bowlers. I was part of a preview, doesn't matter where. I mean, I could name.
Of course. Never on the back foot, Neha Shetty, please. I mean,
Yes.
always, we are promoting her. Why not?
Yes, I was part of a preview, and we did talk about how England would possibly go with 3 fast bowlers. I wasn't surprised by that. I wouldn't say surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if Sri Charini did make a debut, but I was again a bit scared that India were going with 3 spinners. We know how much they've relied on the spinners, and 3 spinners it isn't a surprise for this Indian team. But I was just a bit worried because leading up to this pitch, a lot of people were talking about how this will be conducive to fast bowling. But Lords in the last 2 years has been horrendous for both just batting in general or just the test format. And we know how dominant fast bowlers have been. Even though spinners have played a role on this surface, going with 3 spinners for the Indian team and just 2 fast bowlers with 2 test matches under their belt, yeah, I was a bit skeptical. But 3 fast bowlers for England, yeah, not too surprised.
To be honest, even I can't say that I was surprised by it, because something that even I'd spoken about while previewing the game was the fact that England have always relied on their pacers when it comes to the longest format. Even when they played that test match in 2023 in India, they stuck to just the 2 spinners. They did not even go for the third option. So I was not exactly expecting them to sort of do something very left field, but I was just disappointed to not see someone like her, because I truly believe she's very skilled. And also, given how the conditions played, I feel that she could have been a bit more of a differential than someone like a Nizzy Wong, who, despite what numbers might reflect, I didn't think had the greatest of games out there. I thought she was very wayward and very inconsistent. Talking about that itself, let's just start off with the English side. Again, a lot was expected of them. They had just made the finals. They played at this very venue, the World T20 final that happened last week. The test match was not exactly what we expected in terms of how dominant India were and how muted the performance was for England.
I'll tell you this. I wasn't surprised by the batting performance. I know I'm assuming we'll go innings by innings, but I wasn't surprised by England's batting performance only because they haven't really scored a lot of runs in the first innings every time they play a test match, and they just haven't scored enough runs to win matches. Also, why they have a horrible test record. The one match where Tammy Beaumont did score that double hundred, they still went on to lose that match. Just goes to show how they don't score enough runs, which is also why when India were put into bat first, I was a lot more confident for this Indian team, because it almost felt like the Indian team just need to score enough runs for the English batters to crumble under pressure. And that's exactly what happened. I was very, very happy by the fact that India were batting first. And I know we were at 1.37 for two. We lost Shefali and Yastika Bhatia. So there was a bit of pressure there. But I almost had that in mind that you just need to score enough runs. And that's exactly what we did. We'd scored 280 odd. And yeah, the rest of it followed.
In fact, if I'm being honest, in the very first innings, of course, like you said, Yastika and Shefali were back in the heart very early on. Those were two absolute jaffas, top nuts, nothing to take away from the bowlers, but they were two top deliveries in the middle of nothing. There was just nothingness, there was just poor bowling, and then out of nowhere, a Jaffa came in. It sort of castled Yastika Bhatia, it took care of Shefali Verma, but you knew that it's not a sustainable approach because you can't keep hoping that a Jaffa just comes your way, and that's exactly what happened when Jemmy and Smriti stitched together partnership. And then eventually, when Jemmy did get out, I thought it was a very loose delivery. It was also a very loose drive, and she sort of played it onto her stumps. That bowling, when you look at Lauren Bell, of course, not as great a World Cup as she would have wanted to, still not bad by any stretch of imagination. But Lauren Bell, Lauren Filer, Izzy Wong, all three of them as part of the pace attack were cumulatively very, very inconsistent and almost very lackluster.
They were very lackluster. In fact, in the last couple of years, Lauren Filer, I think, is the most expensive bowler for the England team in the red ball format. And it just showed because they were very, very inconsistent. And you're right, the two deliveries that were quote unquote good deliveries and Jaffers did get a wicket. In fact, I do have a stat for you. They were so inconsistent. So if you were a batter, if you were to bat at Lords, let's just say, imagine yourself batting at Lords, the length you would want to face on this pitch wouldn't want to face. If you were a bowler bowling, let's just say, you'd want to bowl it at full length delivery, good length or short of good length. And the line you want to bowl it at is at the stumps because the pitch wasn't as quick. It was relatively slow. Also, because you want to make sure the batter is facing as many deliveries as possible and playing at the ball. So you would want to bowl it at the stumps or just outside the off stump. And the England pacers were only able to do that 77% of the time. We will talk about how Indian pacers were doing and when we come to that. But remember the 77%, and it's not high at all. If anything, if you have Lauren Filer and Lauren Bell, you expect a lot more. You expect at least 85% of their balls in this line and length, and they just simply weren't able to do that. And it's not just the fast bowlers, right? Because even when Sophie Eccleston came on to bowl, she didn't find a line and length for the most part. And as much as you can criticize her, I think it's the Indian batters. I think it's Smriti using her feet consistently to Sophie Eccleston, ensuring that she doesn't get her rhythm, she doesn't stick to one line and length. Every opportunity that she got, Smriti was either going out of her crease or going back deep into the crease, making sure that she's putting away the bad balls, but also putting away her good balls. And I think that's what got under Sophie Eccleston's skin at one point.
And this is where England's sort of, persistence with just sticking to, their top three, top four bowlers, and in fact, pacers more often than not, it just came back to hurt them. They had only 5 frontline bowlers and only 2 frontline spinners. And even in that, they were very reluctant to use Maddie Villiers earlier on. And I just wasn't sure why, because I genuinely think she's a very good off spinner. And of course, she's making her debut. There'll be the nerves, it's the Lords and all of it. But at the end of the day, you've picked what you've picked. You've got the options at your disposal. So might as well give it a shot. And a tad bit surprised by how they went about it. And even with Sophie Eccleston, I'm with you. I felt there was a bit of the fatigue setting in, from the World Cup, not just Sophie Eccleston, even Lauren Bell for that matter. Things like that. Because I remember reading somewhere that leading up to the game, the Indian side had roughly a 2-week break where they'd sort of just taken a nice detour, a nice small vacation, came back, regrouped and properly strategized and came up with plans which you could see on display. While on the other hand, the England side played the World Cup final just the Sunday before this game. And then 5 days later, they were expected to play a very historic test match. So genuinely hard, if you look at it and if you really want to give them the benefit of doubt. But Izzy Wong, just a few words on her, because, if you look at the numbers, it does say that she went at just 3.4 runs per over, which is not too bad. And she bowled 12 overs, 41 runs, 2 wickets, which also included the big wicket of Jemmy. So you would want to say not the worst of performances, and not to forget, I think she also got Smriti Mandana in the first innings. But then again, so inconsistent. She couldn't, how regularly she bowled down the leg, especially to Smriti. I remember her bowling a maiden to Smriti, or she probably just conceded 1 run, where there were 5 deliveries down the leg side. It was just down the leg side. Smriti would leave the deliveries and the ball would go through to Amy Jones. And yeah, technically just one run, but you're not building any pressure. You're not doing anything.
Yeah, agreed with that. And it's not even Issy Wong. I think one of the Lawrence, I think it was Lauren Filer, if I'm not wrong. There were a couple of deliveries that she bowled down the leg for 4.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they were collectively very, very inconsistent. And I was very surprised by it because the first 10 overs was very important to set the tone, right? And as much as you did get a couple of wickets, India were going at a good rate. The fact that Smriti scored a 50 off 50 says something. And at no point in India's 10 over split, apart from the last 4 overs, at no point in India's 10 over split in the first innings did they have a run rate of below 3. So as much as they were even losing wickets at some point, they were scoring more than 3 runs per over consistently. And that says something about not 3 runs per over consistently. After the end of 10 overs, they were more than 3 runs per over. But that says something about, that says 2 things. One, India were able to consistently score runs regardless of losing wickets. But that also says that the England bowlers weren't able to add on pressure at any point. And that is only because of how inconsistent they were.
Yeah, and once again, I'll just add to it their inability to sort of try and force spin from both ends regularly, and their also reluctance to not use the likes of Alice Capsey. And to some extent, I want to believe even Heather Knight wouldn't have been the worst of choices simply because of how wayward their pacers were. So was it tad bit surprised by that? And that's exactly why I wanted someone like a Tilly Coleman. Of course, in hindsight, it's a lot more easier for me to say it with such conviction. But fair enough, it is what they went ahead with. But talking about the Indian batting itself, Ashwin, when you see that top 8, Shefali was the only one who did not get into double digits. You saw Harman get a start. You saw Smriti score a very nice 50. So did Deepti. You see someone like a Richa Ghosh Rana also. I know not a lot of runs in the first innings, but it is good to see this batting unit really sort of working like a well-oiled machine when it comes to Test cricket at least.
100%. I mean, they all got a start. A lot of people by the end of the innings were talking about how they fell short of possibly 350 or 400. But something you have to keep in mind is that only comes about if you're regularly playing Test cricket. Once you get a start, your white ball instincts just kick in. It's not every day you play the red ball format. It takes a lot of time and effort to have that instincts within you where you don't play your shots instinctively. These girls play so much white ball cricket that you are going to chase a ball outside the off stump. You don't expect any better. The fact that Smriti was one of the best batters in the world chased a ball outside the off stump just goes to show that it's very difficult to just adapt and play a one-off Test match every 6 months. But that being said, like you said, almost everyone contributed, which is also why we had a target. We set a first innings score of around 285 is what I want to say. And yeah, I thought that was good enough. A lot of people might have been talking about how we fell short, but I mean, it genuinely felt good enough, especially on that pitch.
And to be honest, we'll also in some sense have to address the elephant in the room. We've given a lot of flack to Yasika Bhatia during the T20 World Cup. Now, credit where it's due, we'll also be more than happy to shower praises on her. Do you want to sort of, jump the gun and say that she probably has cemented her spot at number 3 for Test cricket, at least for the near future now with a performance like this?
Yeah, I feel for Pratika Rawal, if anything. She got injured in the ODI format. Shefali Verma replaces her and now is permanent. And then she gets injured, who she would have possibly been the number 3 in the Test format. She gets injured and the number 3 scores 100. I'll be completely honest, she scored 12 or 13 in the first innings. And that is the most fluent I've seen her in the last couple of months. Those 12, 13 runs showed so much promise. And I'm not saying this in hindsight. I know it might seem like it, but those 12, 13 runs had so much intent. She wanted to score runs. She wasn't digging a grave for herself. She wasn't batting slow or fast for the sake of doing it. She was putting away the bad balls. She was defending really well. Like I said, she's technically so sound. So I was surprised by 100 in the second innings, but I wasn't surprised by the fact that she was able to settle in, dig deep, and score a lot of runs. Because even in the first innings, the 12, 13 runs, those are incredible runs until she got out, of course.
All right. Makes sense. But of course, I'm with you. She looked genuinely very fluent. I was very happy to see her sort of come good, especially in this format, because, like you also said, she's technically very proficient. I don't think there are too many obvious flaws as such. In fact, a lot of her flaws stem from outside her sort of, batting ability, so to say. It's either the running between her running between the wickets or her intent and things like that. So, yeah, like we said earlier, hopefully she will be able to work on these issues and become the batter that her potential showcases her to be. But now, when we talk about the England side, Ashwin, we've heaped praises on Yasika Bhatia. Unfortunately, I don't think there are too many such batters. you would want to talk about when it comes to the English side, a batting performance to forget, to be honest. Once again, playing at home, not being able to score in excess of 200 in neither of the innings will definitely be something they would be very disappointed with. But this batting lineup really needs a reject as soon as possible.
I completely agree with that. That being said, Nat Silverbrunt did score a 50 in the first innings and Amy Jones 50 in both innings. I thought Amy Jones, as much as she's been criticized a lot for her batting in the last couple of weeks, I thought she batted really well across both these two innings, especially yesterday when a lot of wickets were falling. She stuck in. She, again, dug deep. She ensured that she wasn't playing bad shots. Scoring 250s under pressure is no joke, and she was able to do that. Natsiva Brunt, I was a bit surprised by the second innings dismissal, the sweep shot that she played to get out bowled. I don't think she was even looking at the ball. At least according to the replay, there was no indication that she was actually watching the ball. It almost felt like a premeditated shot. But yeah, in the first innings, she played extremely well. Again, under pressure, she played attacking cricket, which I was I admired her for that, especially under pressure when wickets were falling. But yeah, that being said, there's no one else which felt like was able to score any runs. I wasn't even surprised by the fact, I say this with a lot of respect, but I wasn't even surprised by the fact that Heather Knight through the test match did announce her retirement, because I didn't see her scoring a lot of runs in the test format. And even Tammy Beaumont coming into this test match, she hadn't scored a lot of runs. And so again, it wasn't the biggest of surprises that they decided this test match would be it for their international career.
Fair enough. And I don't know how am I going to sound, but as someone who has criticized Amy Jones, and I still believe there's a lot of reason to criticize her, but of course, top performances from her. How much of it? Again, this is going to be a very leading, very biased question. Apologies, especially for those watching this. But how much of it was also down to the fact that she was coming in 15, 20 overs into the innings? The ball was nice and soft. You could not play your shots. You don't have to worry about having to handle the new ball. Somewhere it also helped her that, there weren't just as many demons to contend with.
I think it's two things, right? So the first innings, you could probably say that even though if she was under pressure, fair, you could probably cut the, you could go with your dislikeness towards her and say that it became much easier to bat. But in the second innings, I think context is important, because they were on the field for the longest time while she was also wicket keeping, and that takes a toll on your body after your first inning. So she had to wicket keep and then come out to bat, score a 50, and then stay on the field for a very long time. Now I know she bats number 5, number 6, number 6 she bats, so she had a bit of time to take rest and then to sit and all of that. Still takes a toll on your physical body, and especially because you don't wicket keep and play the red ball format every single day of your life. So for her to do that in the second innings, I feel like is a bit more difficult, but she did it. She still scored a 50. She could have easily thrown a wicket away like she did on the last day of the test match. For her to score those 50 runs in itself, I think is a lot. And as much as I agree with a lot of criticism that she faces, and with her batting, she shows a lot of potential but isn't able to convert it. But in this test match, I thought there was a bit of a tick mark to her name in that sense.
You know what? Once again, I'll probably have to sort of go back on my word, because what you said also makes a lot of sense. As a keeper, she spent, the better part of the non-batting innings on the field, squatting and fielding and keeping and whatnot. So it does take a toll. And for her to come up with 250s despite that, and as much as I want to try and discount the knocks for being, come on the surface a bit easier, but fair enough. Of course, I will have to go back, definitely 100%. But when you look at the batting lineup, Ashwin, we spoke about how, Tammy, Heather, they were anyway on their way out, and in some sense, you can see why they are on their way out. Emma Lamb was another name that a lot of people spoke about. I personally had Alice Capsey and Emma Lamb both starting for England. They went ahead with Maddie Villiers, which was understandable. I just think it was a change that they would make, but a very understandable change because she offers a lot more value with the ball. She's a bowling all-rounder, while Alice and Emma both are batting all-rounders who tend to just roll their arm over. But I personally do believe that Emma Lamb is exactly the kind of batter they need, because Alice Capsey, once again, despite all the X factor that she brings to the table, just flatters to deceive.
I agree with that. I think if you look at the playing 11 in itself, they went very defensive, and it almost felt like it while they played the test match. It surprises me because honestly, I haven't seen Nat Silverbrunt captain a lot in the red ball format, but the entire test match, it almost felt like she was always in the back foot. Now, if England batted first and they collapsed and they had a 170 all out in the first innings, that would make sense. But that was not even the case to begin with, because they chose to bowl first. And it felt like from the first 10 overs itself, she took a step back, and the entire test match felt like she was playing defense. And even the playing 11 seemed to suggest that. I mean, it could have been very proactive of her to play 3 spinners and 2 fast bowlers, but England have always played 3 fast bowlers, and that's what she was going to do. In her perspective, there is no reason for her to change, but they have also not won a lot of test matches, so might as well be proactive a little bit. But they weren't, and that's exactly what happened throughout the test match. They were just playing defense.
And to be honest, I don't see a lot of room for change, because when you look at the FTP and the number of games they'll be playing, they don't play any test matches in 2026. At least they next play Australia next year. They also have a test slated versus West Indies, which in all likelihood will be cancelled, just like the Australia West Indies test got cancelled earlier this year. India, on the other hand, they've got a test match coming up later this year in December, and that is one to watch out for, because it's India versus South Africa, taking each other on in South Africa. Once again, pacer-friendly conditions. Bowlers tend to be in the game throughout the test match. Keeping that in mind now, because unfortunately there's not a lot of red ball cricket to go by, are there any more names or anything else that you would want to see the Indian team try? Because this is going to be South Africa. You would want to believe that a third pacer would be more suited to conditions like that. If so, who do you think should the third pacer be? If not, would you stick to the same 11?
I would stick to the same 11 unless there is a drastic change on the pitch. So remember the 77% that I spoke about earlier. The fast bowlers, the Indian fast bowlers, that's Kranti Gaud and Saili Sadgre. By the way, we also have to talk about Kranti Gaud getting a 5. But in the first innings, these 2 fast bowlers had an accuracy rate in the line and lengths that spoke about of 93%, which is insane. And that is not what I expected at all from them. Because of the way Kranti Gaud was bowling in the last couple of weeks, consistency wasn't something I would factor her with. But the fact that she was so consistent throughout both innings just says something, which is also why I wouldn't be surprised if India goes with the same playing 11 unless the pitch has a whole grass covering on the pitch and all of that. Unless that is the case, if the pitch is drastically different, might as well go with the same 11 unless there are injuries also, which almost seems to be the case with this Indian side. If not, yeah, the same 11.
In fact, of course, 6 months is still a long way away. We saw Pratika Rawal get injured 2 days before the test match. So something like that can also happen. And it's hard for us to account for something like that. So fair enough. And that match, of course, is coming live from Gilberta, Port Elizabeth. So once again, a very picturesque venue. So it will be fantastic to watch that. And Ashwin, of course, thanks for also pointing it out. Kranti Gaud, we not speak a lot about her. A fantastic performance, firstly. And what a great story, right? We all are sucker for sports in general because of the stories that come with it, because of the players and what it takes for them to become cricketers. For someone from a small town in a very nondescript part of India to now make it to the Lord's Honours Board as the first ever female cricketer in the history of the sport, that's generally a story that I wish I was as good a writer to be able to script a story like this. But that's one for the ages, firstly, and again, a performance to be so massively proud of.
Very, very proud of. Like I said, I mean, heading into this test match, not a lot of people would have thought. I mean, a lot of people did think she would play, but not a lot of people would have assumed a performance like this. To get a first 5 in test format, to be the first women's cricketer to get a test 5 at Lord's says so much. But it's also the way she went about her bowling. The way she went about her bowling made me feel like she plays test matches for a living. Sticking to one line and length is one thing. Being able to use the wobble seam, which is insane to me. She was using it as if she uses it for a living. To be able to use the wobble seam consistently, all her 5 wickets in the first innings, by the way, was because of the wobble seam. The way she was able to stick to one line and length and let the pitch do its thing. She was hitting the pitch, hitting the deck kind of bowler. And it's not every day you say these words with Kranti Gaud, but she was able to do it because she played a test match and because she was able to execute her skill. And yeah, it was incredible. I mean, like you said, she herself has a story within of how she came up through the system and then got selected for the Indian team. But even when you just look at this test match alone, there's so much story just leading up to the test match. And yeah, she did incredibly well. Like I will take I did say that I wasn't too sure about her performance in the test match, but man, oh man, she proved me wrong.
In fact, for those who've been critical of the WPL and how, I'll just look at how India performed in the Women's T20 World Cup, and that's the format that the WPL is in, and still, they've not been able to win a title or even come to the semi-finals, let alone win a title. This is exactly what I want them to see. You see Kranti Gaud, you see Sri Charni to some extent. I even want to take the names of Yastika Bhatia and Sneha Rana because they were able to make a comeback through the WPL. You see someone like a Nandini Sharma waiting in the wings. All of them are products of the WPL in some shape or form, and that's exactly what we want to see. Another name, Saili Sadgari. Once again, she is a proven red ball entity, but we know that in India, WPL and IPL in men's cricket tends to play a much bigger role because you need to sort of play well to be in the audience's mind, in the selector's mind. Saili Sadgari had a more than decent WPL this time around, and you could see somewhere that played a role in her first being picked for Australia, took a four for that, and even this time around, I don't think she did a very bad job. And that's where, once again, which is why we need tournaments like these. And the more we see such tournaments across the world, the better players become, the more equipped they become to handle the pressures of not just Test cricket, but international cricket in general. Now, Kranti Gaur, of course, you spoke about how good she was while using the wobble seam. One thing that I know in hindsight, it might sound very hypocritical of me in some sense. If that's a word, or very hypocrite of me, I guess that's the word, not hypocritical. Whatever English I've been learning. Apologies for that. Kranti Gaud was not a name that I had initially picked in my 11 simply because I did not think India would have the courage or would show the courage to go ahead with the two paces that they should be playing. Kranti and Saili were always the two names that I would have personally picked ahead of someone like Renuka Singh Thakur for two reasons. One, Renuka and Saili are both very similar in that both of them move the ball in the air. They take the new ball and they need the new ball to sort of extract something. And with the older balls, their efficacy tends to lower a bit. With Kranti Gaud, because she's someone who tends to bring the surface into the equation, she's more of a seam bowler and less of a swing bowler. She does not necessarily need a new ball. She can actually sort of go across faces and do whatever she wants, provided she's in good rhythm and she's bowling well. And that's exactly what we got to see, not just with the new ball, but even in the later phases of the game when she picked those wickets. She was so consistent in hitting those lengths in particular. Something those who've seen the WPL and those who remember Kranti Gaud sort of claim to fame, it was that dismissal of Nick Lanning outside the off stump, and then it just seems back in to crash into the top of off. Just so good to see her not only do it there, but also do it with the red ball over here. The way she got the ball rather to move away and into right-handers was genuinely very, very beautiful to watch. But I really hope this is the performance that motivates her to go on to do some good things, because I don't think there are too many pacers like her in India. And I'm not just talking about, her type. I'm not just talking about seam movement, swing movement. She also bowls with good speed. She also has the ability to be a workhorse when it comes to the longest format. She's also a very good fielder, very athletic, importantly, runs quickly. Importantly, from whatever little I saw of her batting ability in Australia, I genuinely think she has more than enough ability to become a decent lower order batter at number 9, number 8. And if she can become the answer to sort of, India's question of who will be that pace bowling all-rounder for us, which I truly believe she can. When it comes to India, of course, Team India won't be playing a lot of international cricket for a while now. If I'm not wrong, their next assignment will be versus Zimbabwe, and that's coming later in the year. In October, I want to say October or November. Apart from that, for England, of course, immediately they've got only one assignment. It is that time of the year. It is the 100 coming up, and it'll be very fascinating to see because this will be the first ever edition with IPL owners. We earlier saw an auction where so many players went for the big bucks. So very exciting to see that, and hopefully Ashwin will join me for a video or two on that too. But Ashwin, any final thoughts, any parting words on the test match itself?
This should just encourage cricket boards, especially the top three, who can spend a bit of money, to have these girls play more and more test matches, because they get to showcase their skill. You would never talk about Kranti Gaud and wobble seam if it wasn't for a test match at Lords. You would never talk about Yastika Bhatia batting at number 3 and scoring hundreds and having a name in the honours board if it wasn't for a test match at Lords. I think these should be just examples for cricketing boards, especially the top three, to just come together and to have test matches every so often and not make it a charitable contest, and to make sure in England summers you have a test match in England, and Australian summers you have a test match in Australia, to make it an actual thing and not just a one-off test match once in 6 months where you only practice a week before and hopefully the test match plays out for all 4 days. And I think this one test match at Lords hopefully is again a domino effect. I know I've been very, very hopeful in the last couple of years, but hopefully it's a domino effect. The Perth test match, the pink ball test match could have been one. Hopefully this is an even more of a domino effect for more test matches for the girls coming up.
Yeah, importantly, I just hope that this finally sort of spurs the conversations for having a 3-test series, if not a 5-test series, and not just one-off tests, because it isn't doing anyone a favor. Like Ashwin said, more often than not, they're coming in with just 1 week of prep, and by the time they get used to, whatever it takes to adapt to this format, they're done with the test match and they just have to move on. And I don't think it's fair on the players themselves. I know it might not be the most financially sound format, especially for women's cricket, but somewhere a balance needs to be struck between what makes financial sense and what makes sense just from a cricket perspective. So I just hope we get to see a 3-test series very soon. But anyways, that's that from this video on Women's Cricket Central. Like I said up top, if you've reached till the end, please make sure you've hit the like button if you haven't already. Please make sure you subscribe to Women's Cricket Central on YouTube if you haven't already. And of course, before I forget, do check out Women's Cricket by JB on YouTube. They've been doing some phenomenal stuff when it comes to covering women's cricket. Please do check that out. And apart from that, do follow Cricket by JB on YouTube, Instagram, and X. And until then, it's a goodbye from both of us. Thank you so much for sticking till the end. We will be back here soon. Bye-bye.